I will never forget the sound of my son's scream. One second, our family was laughing as we explored a beautiful mountain trail. My wife was taking pictures, our daughter was collecting wildflowers, and my 10-year-old son Liam was only a few steps ahead of us. The next second, the ground beneath him gave way. I watched my little boy disappear between two massive rocks. "Dad, help me!" Those words still echo in my mind. We ran to the edge and looked down. Liam was trapped deep inside a narrow mountain crevice. He was alive, but he couldn't move. Every time he tried, he cried out in pain. I reached for him with everything I had, but my fingertips couldn't even touch his hand. For the next 5 hours, my wife and I lived through every parent's worst nightmare. We begged rescuers to save our son while praying the mountain wouldn't collapse around him. As the hours passed and his voice grew weaker, I became convinced I was listening to my child die. I never imagined a simple family hike would become the longest and most terrifying day of our lives. This is the story of the 5 hours that changed our family forever. My name is Daniel Carter, and before that terrible day, I believed I was doing everything right as a husband and father. I was 42 years old, worked long hours as an electrical engineer, and spent most weekdays buried in deadlines and meetings. My wife, Emily, often reminded me that our children wouldn't stay little forever. "You can always earn more money," she would say with a smile, "but you can't make more childhood memories." She was right. Our son Liam had just turned 10. He was adventurous, curious, and always asking questions about nature. He dreamed of becoming a park ranger one day because he loved mountains, forests, and every animal he could find. Our daughter Sophie was 7 years old and completely different from her brother. She was gentle, creative, and happiest when she was drawing flowers or collecting colorful leaves. Despite their different personalities, they were incredibly close. Liam always held Sophie's hand whenever we crossed a road, and Sophie believed her big brother could do anything. Watching them together filled my heart with pride. One Friday evening, I surprised everyone during dinner. "I've got good news," Emily smiled. "What is it?" "I took Monday off." Both children looked at me with excitement. "Really?" Liam asked. "So we're going somewhere?" Sophie added. I nodded. "We're taking a family trip to Eagle Ridge Mountain Park." Liam nearly knocked over his chair, jumping up. "Seriously? I've always wanted to hike there." Emily laughed as she shook her head. I don't think I've ever seen him this excited. The rest of the weekend became one long countdown. The children packed their own backpacks with snacks, water bottles, and small flashlights. Emily prepared sandwiches, fruit, and homemade cookies. I checked the weather forecast several times. Sunny skies, cool temperatures, perfect hiking conditions. Monday morning finally arrived. We left home just after sunrise. The drive took nearly 2 hours, but nobody complained. Liam pointed excitedly whenever he spotted deer or birds from the car window. Sophie sang along to every song on the radio, making us all laugh when she forgot the words. Emily reached across the center console and squeezed my hand. "This is exactly what we needed." I smiled. I couldn't agree more. When we reached the mountain park, it looked even more beautiful than the pictures online. Towering cliffs rose into the blue sky. Tall pine trees covered the hillsides. A cool breeze carried the fresh scent of cedar and wildflowers. Families, photographers, and hikers filled the visitor area. Everyone seemed happy. Before starting the trail, we gathered around a large wooden map. I pointed to the route. We stayed together the entire time. The children nodded. No running ahead. No climbing on rocks. If anyone gets tired, we stop. Liam smiled confidently. "Don't worry, Dad. We'll be careful." Looking back now, I wish I had repeated those rules 100 more times. The first part of the hike was wonderful. The trail was wide and easy to follow. Sunlight filtered through the trees, creating beautiful patterns on the ground. We stopped often to take photographs. Liam spotted a hawk circling high above the mountain. Sophie filled her pockets with smooth stones she planned to paint later. Emily laughed more that morning than she had in weeks. It felt like time had slowed down. After nearly an hour, we reached a scenic overlook. The view stretched for miles. Rolling green valleys, sparkling rivers, mountains fading into the distance. We stood together for a family picture. A kind stranger offered to take it for us. In the photo, we're all smiling. No one could have imagined what would happen less than an hour later. As we continued climbing, the trail became steeper and narrower. Warning signs reminded hikers to stay on the marked path. Loose rocks covered parts of the ground. I walked in front while Emily stayed behind the children. Everything seemed under control. Then Liam noticed something. "Dad, look!" He pointed toward a large rock formation just a few feet away from the trail. "There are baby birds." I looked where he was pointing. Hidden among the rocks was a small nest. From where we stood, we could hear tiny chirping sounds. "They're beautiful," Sophie whispered. I smiled. "We'll admire them from here." Liam nodded, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes. He wanted a closer look. I should have recognized that expression. I've seen it on his face his entire life, the desire to explore, to discover, to get just a little closer. It only took one step, one careless step onto loose ground, and in the next heartbeat, our perfect family day became every parent's worst nightmare. The sky grew darker with every passing minute. The cheerful mountain we had admired that morning now felt cold, silent, and unforgiving. Strong gusts of wind swept across the cliffs, carrying loose dust and leaves through the air. The rescue team worked with incredible focus. Some secured ropes to large trees. Others carefully studied the rocks surrounding Liam, searching for the safest way to free him. No one rushed. Everyone understood that one wrong move could make the situation far worse. Emily stood beside me, holding my hand so tightly that neither of us noticed the pain. Our daughter Sophie sat wrapped in a blanket that another hiker had given her. She hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. She just stared toward the crevice. Every few minutes she whispered the same question. "Is my brother coming home?" Each time I forced myself to smile. Yes, but inside, I wasn't sure. A paramedic walked over to us. "Your son is showing signs of exhaustion. He hasn't had any water. He can't move enough for us to reach him safely." My heart sank. "Can you give him something?" "We're trying." Using a long rescue pole, they slowly lowered a small bottle of water attached to a rope. "Liam," the rescuer called gently, "can you reach it?" Our son stretched one arm as far as he could. His fingers barely touched the bottle. He managed to grab it with trembling hands. The entire rescue team sighed with relief. He took only a few small sips before handing it back. "Save the rest," he whispered. Even trapped and frightened, he was thinking clearly. I had never been prouder of him. The lead rescuer climbed back to the surface and spoke with his team. "The rock is pressing against his leg. If we move it too quickly, it could cause even more damage." Emily couldn't hold back anymore. "Please, do whatever you have to do. Just save my son." The rescuer nodded. "We will, but we have to do it safely." Another hour passed. The rescue team brought in specialized inflatable lifting bags designed to raise heavy rocks without causing sudden movement. It was their best chance. Everyone stepped back as the rescuers carefully slid the equipment into the narrow gap. The entire mountain seemed silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Then, a loud cracking sound echoed through the rocks. Emily screamed. Several small stones rolled into the crevice. "Stop!" one rescuer shouted. Everyone froze. For a terrifying moment, we thought the mountain was collapsing. Thankfully, the movement stopped. The team leader took a deep breath. "We're okay, but we have to slow down." I looked toward Liam. "Dad." His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "I'm tired." Those words broke something inside me. "No, buddy, stay with me. Talk to me." He nodded weakly. "Remember, our camping trip?" I smiled through tears. "The one where you caught your first fish?" A tiny smile appeared on his face. It was so small. It was. "But you acted like you'd caught a shark." For the first time in hours, Liam laughed. It was only for a second, but hearing that laugh gave everyone around us hope. The rescuers continued working while I kept talking. We remembered birthdays, Christmas mornings, baseball games, the day he learned to ride his bike. Anything to keep him awake. As the 5th hour approached, one of the rescuers looked up. "I think we've got enough space." Slowly, very slowly, the massive rock lifted just a few inches. Another rescuer reached into the gap. "Liam, when I count to 3, I need you to pull as hard as you can." He nodded. 1, 2, 3. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then Liam cried out as his trapped leg finally came free. "I've got him." The rescuer wrapped both arms around my son and carefully lifted him out of the narrow crevice. The moment Liam appeared above the rocks, Emily ran forward. She collapsed to her knees, hugging him as tightly as she could without hurting him. I wrapped my arms around both of them. None of us could stop crying. Sophie came running and threw herself into the hug. "I knew you'd come back." Liam smiled weakly. "I told you I would." The entire rescue team stood quietly, many of them wiping tears from their own eyes. After nearly 5 hours, our family was together again. But as the paramedics placed Liam onto a stretcher, one doctor examined his injured leg. His expression suddenly changed. He looked at another medic and said quietly, "We need to get him to the hospital immediately." The relief we had just begun to feel was suddenly replaced by a brand new fear. Our nightmare wasn't over yet. As the helicopter lifted off the mountain, I held Liam's small hand as tightly as I could. He lay on the stretcher with an oxygen mask over his face. His eyes were half open, but he looked exhausted. The pain medication had eased some of his suffering, yet every bump and vibration made him wince. Emily sat beside him, gently brushing the dirt from his hair. "You did so well, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Liam managed a weak smile. "I was really scared, Mom." Emily's tears fell into his blanket. "I know, baby, I know. I'd never felt so helpless. As a father, I wanted to take his pain away. I wanted to trade places with him. Instead, all I could do was sit there and pray." The flight to the trauma hospital felt endless. When we landed, a team of doctors and nurses was already waiting. They rushed Liam through the emergency doors while we were told to remain outside. "I need to go with him," Emily cried. "I'm sorry," a nurse said gently. "They need room to work." The doors closed, and suddenly the hallway became the hardest place I had ever stood. Emily collapsed into my arms. "What if?" She couldn't finish the sentence. I held her tightly. "He made it through 5 hours trapped in that mountain. He's stronger than we know." Deep inside, though, I was terrified. An hour passed. Then another. Every time the emergency room doors opened, my heart jumped. Every doctor who walked by made me think they were coming to speak to us, but they never stopped. Sophie sat quietly beside me, holding the stuffed rabbit a volunteer had given her. She looked up at me with red, tired eyes. "Daddy, is Liam going to lose his leg?" The question caught me completely off guard. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." She nodded sadly. "I don't want my brother to hurt anymore." I pulled her into my lap and hugged her. "Neither do I." Late that evening, a surgeon finally walked toward us. His face was serious. Emily stood before he could even speak. "How is my son?" The doctor removed his surgical cap. "Liam is going to be okay." Both of us burst into tears. "But..." That single word stopped us. He suffered a severe crush injury to his lower leg. There was swelling and damage to the muscles. We performed emergency surgery to relieve the pressure. I barely breathed. "Will he walk again?" The doctor paused. "We're hopeful, but recovery will take time. Physical therapy will be very important." It wasn't the perfect news we had hoped for, but it was enough. Our son was alive. Nothing else mattered. A nurse led us into Liam's hospital room. He was asleep. Bandages covered his injured leg. Machines quietly monitored his heartbeat and breathing. Emily kissed his forehead. "I love you so much." I stood beside the bed, unable to find words. Seeing my strong, adventurous little boy lying there so still broke my heart. The next morning, Liam slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the room. "Did we make it?" I smiled through tears. "You did, buddy. You're safe." He looked at his bandaged leg. "It still hurts, I know, but the doctors are helping you." A few minutes later, Sophie walked into the room carrying a folded piece of paper. "I made something." She handed it to Liam. It was a drawing of our family holding hands beneath a bright blue sky. Above the picture, she had written in large, uneven letters, "Our family stays together." Liam smiled. "I love it." She hugged him carefully. I was so scared. So was I. For the first time since the accident, the room filled with quiet laughter. Not because everything was okay, but because we were together. That evening, Officer Reynolds, the leader of the mountain rescue team, stopped by the hospital. He shook Liam's hand. "You were one brave young man." Liam smiled shyly. "You were brave too." The rescuer laughed. "I had a lot of help." Then he looked at Emily and me. "I've been doing this job for nearly 20 years. I've rescued many people, but I've never seen parents fight so hard to keep their child calm. You never gave up on him." After he left, I stood beside the hospital window looking out over the city lights. The events of the day replayed in my mind. One step, one collapsing ledge, 5 hours of fear, one miracle. I realized how quickly life can change. That morning we had been planning where to eat dinner after our hike. Now we were grateful for something much simpler, the chance to hear our son's heartbeat, to hold his hand, to tell him we loved him. Sometimes the greatest miracles aren't dramatic. Sometimes they're simply another sunrise with the people you thought you had lost forever. The weeks after Liam's surgery were some of the hardest our family had ever faced. The doctors had saved his leg, but they were honest with us from the beginning. "Recovery won't happen overnight," one of them said. "It will take patience, determination, and a lot of hard work." Liam nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. The boy who loved to run, climb, and explore mountains could barely sit up in bed without pain. For the first few days, he hardly spoke. He stared out the hospital window for hours, watching other children playing in the park across the street. One afternoon, I noticed tears rolling down his face. I sat beside him and gently placed my hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, buddy?" He tried to smile, but he couldn't. "What if I never walk again?" Those words hit me harder than anything that had happened on the mountain. I looked into my son's frightened eyes and shook my head. "Listen to me, Liam. The doctors didn't save your life so you could give up now. They believe in you." "So do I. Emily took his hand. "And no matter what happens, we'll face it together." Sophie climbed onto the edge of the bed and hugged her brother carefully. "If you can't walk for a while, I'll push your wheelchair everywhere." Liam laughed for the first time in days. "You'd probably crash it," she grinned. "Maybe once." That little moment of laughter changed the atmosphere in the room. A week later, Liam began physical therapy. The first session was heartbreaking. The therapist helped him stand using parallel bars. The moment he placed weight on his injured leg, he cried out in pain. "I can't." "Yes, you can," the therapist encouraged gently. "Just one step." Liam clenched his teeth. Sweat formed on his forehead. Slowly, painfully, he took one small step. Emily buried her face against my shoulder as tears filled her eyes. It was only one step, but to us, it felt like he had climbed an entire mountain. The following weeks became a routine. Hospital, therapy, home, repeat. Some days Liam made progress. Other days he became frustrated. "I hate this," he shouted after one difficult therapy session. "I just want my old life back." I sat beside him in the car before driving home. "I know. I wish I could take this pain away." He stared out the window. "Dad, were you scared?" I smiled sadly. "When you were trapped?" He nodded. I took a deep breath. I've never been more scared in my entire life. I thought I was going to lose my little boy. He looked at me quietly. I thought I was going to die. Those words broke my heart all over again. I wrapped my arm around him. "But you didn't. And every single day you're getting stronger." As the months passed, Liam slowly improved. His crutches became one crutch. One crutch became a walking stick. Eventually, he could walk short distances on his own. The day he walked across our living room without any support, Sophie started clapping so loudly that the neighbors probably heard her. Emily cried openly. I couldn't stop smiling. A few months later, Officer Reynolds and several members of the mountain rescue team visited our home. Liam ran, carefully but proudly, to open the door himself. The rescuers couldn't believe how much he had recovered. Officer Reynolds handed Liam a small wooden plaque. It read, "To Liam Carter for extraordinary courage." "You reminded all of us what bravery looks like," he said. Liam looked down at the plaque before quietly replying, "I wasn't brave. I was just trying to come home." No one in the room could hold back their tears. That evening, after everyone had left, our family sat together on the back porch watching the sunset. There was a peaceful silence between us. Finally, Emily looked at me and smiled. "Do you know something?" "What?" "We almost lost the most important thing in our lives," I nodded. "And because of that, we'll never take another ordinary day for granted." I looked at Liam and Sophie laughing together in the backyard. Months earlier, I had stood on a mountain believing I would never hear that sound again. Now it filled our home. I realized then that miracles don't always happen in a single moment. Sometimes they happen one painful step at a time. And watching my son smile again was the greatest miracle I had ever witnessed. Almost a year passed after the accident. The scars on Liam's leg had begun to fade, but the scars inside our hearts were slower to heal. Physically, he was doing remarkably well. After months of physical therapy, he was walking without assistance. He still had a slight limp when he became tired, but the doctors were amazed by his recovery. "You've worked incredibly hard," his therapist told him during one of his final appointments. Liam smiled proudly. "I had a good reason." "What was that?" "I wanted to hike with my family again." The therapist looked at Emily and me before smiling. "I think he'll get there." Even though Liam had healed, none of us talked about the mountain very often. Whenever someone mentioned hiking, the room became quiet. Emily would quickly change the subject. Sophie would lower her eyes, and I would remember the sound of my son's scream echoing through the rocks. One Saturday morning, Liam surprised us. He walked into the kitchen carrying 4 mugs of hot chocolate. "I've been thinking," Emily smiled. "That usually means something important." He nodded. "I don't want us to be afraid forever." The room fell silent. "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked at each of us. The mountain wasn't evil. It was an accident. If we spend the rest of our lives hiding from it, then it wins. I stared at my 10-year-old son in disbelief. Somehow, during those painful months, he had become wiser than many adults. Emily reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "What are you saying?" "I want us to go back." Sophie almost dropped her mug. "Back there?" Liam nodded. "Not today. Not tomorrow. But someday. I don't want my last memory of that place to be fear." None of us answered immediately. The idea terrified me. Yet deep inside, I knew he was right. Fear had controlled our lives for almost a year. Maybe it was time to face it. 3 months later, after talking with Liam's doctors and carefully preparing ourselves emotionally, we decided to return. The morning of the trip felt strangely familiar. Emily packed sandwiches. Sophie carried her sketchbook. Liam checked everyone's water bottles twice. This time, though, we packed more than food. Emergency whistles, a first aid kit, a detailed trail map, a satellite emergency beacon, extra flashlights, portable chargers, and enough supplies to handle unexpected situations. As we drove toward Eagle Ridge Mountain Park, no one talked very much. Each of us was lost in our own thoughts. When we finally arrived, my heart started racing. Everything looked exactly the same: the towering cliffs, the tall pine trees, the cool mountain air. For a brief moment, I considered turning around, then Liam gently placed his hand on my shoulder. "It's okay, Dad. We're together." Those simple words gave me the courage to take the first step. We stayed only on the marked trail. Every few minutes, we stopped to admire the scenery. Not once did anyone rush ahead. Not once did we separate. Eventually, we reached the area where the accident had happened. The dangerous section had been completely secured. New safety fences surrounded the unstable rocks. Warning signs had been installed along the trail. The park had clearly learned from what had happened. Liam stood quietly for several moments. Then he walked to the safety fence. He looked down toward the narrow crevice where he had been trapped for 5 long hours. "I remember thinking I'd never see you again," he said softly. Emily wrapped her arm around him. "I remember praying every second." Sophie slipped her hand into Liam's. "I remember asking God to bring my brother home." I couldn't hold back my tears. I remember making myself a promise. Liam looked at me. "What promise?" "If we ever got you back, I would never let a single day go by without telling you how much I love you." Without saying another word, all 4 of us embraced. Visitors walking past slowed down, quietly giving us space. They didn't know our story, but they understood that the moment mattered. Before leaving, Liam took the small wooden plaque the rescue team had given him from his backpack. He held it for a moment, then smiled. "I don't need this anymore." Instead of leaving it behind, he placed it back into his bag. The real reminder isn't the plaque, it's all of us. As we walked back toward the parking area, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the mountains in warm golden light. For the first time since that terrible day, the mountain no longer felt like the place that almost took our son. It had become the place that reminded us how precious every heartbeat, every hug, and every ordinary day with the people we love truly is. Life slowly found its rhythm again, but our family was no longer the same. The accident had changed each of us in ways we never expected. Liam grew into a quieter, more thoughtful young man. He still loved nature, but now he respected it with a maturity far beyond his years. Before every hike, he checked the weather, studied the trail map, and reminded everyone to stay together. Sophie also changed. The little girl who used to be afraid of talking to strangers became someone who cared deeply about others. She started volunteering with her school to raise money for mountain rescue organizations. Whenever someone asked why, she simply smiled and said, "Because they saved my brother." Emily and I often watched our children with grateful hearts. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, Emily looked at me and said, "Do you realize we almost missed all of this?" I nodded slowly. If that rescue team had arrived even a little later. Neither of us finished the sentence. We didn't need to. Some memories were too painful to put into words. A few weeks later, we received a letter in the mail. It was from the Mountain Rescue Association. Inside was an invitation to their annual appreciation ceremony, where rescuers and families reunited to celebrate lives that had been saved. Emily looked at me. "We should go. I think we need to." The ceremony took place at the same mountain park where everything had happened. As we arrived, dozens of rescue workers greeted us with warm smiles. Some of them immediately recognized Liam. "Look how tall you've gotten," one rescuer laughed. Another shook his hand. "You gave us quite a challenge that day." Liam smiled shyly. "I'm sorry," the rescuer laughed. "Don't apologize. You reminded us why we do this job." During the ceremony, several families shared their stories. Parents spoke about children who had been rescued. Hikers thanked volunteers who had searched through freezing rain and darkness. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Then the event host called our family's name. "We'd like to invite the Carter family to the stage." My heart pounded as we walked forward together. The audience applauded warmly. The rescue team leader, Officer Reynolds, stepped up to the microphone. "I've been part of mountain rescue for more than 20 years, he began. "I've seen fear. I've seen heartbreak. But I've also seen incredible courage." He looked toward Liam. "This young man never stopped fighting." Then he looked at Emily and me. "And these parents never stopped believing." He handed our family a framed photograph. It showed the entire rescue team standing together on the day Liam was saved. Across the bottom were the words, "No one gets left behind." Emily burst into tears. I couldn't speak. Liam carefully held the frame against his chest. "I'll treasure this forever," he whispered. After the ceremony, people gathered around us. One elderly volunteer smiled at Liam. "You probably don't remember me. I brought blankets to your parents while they waited." Liam shook the man's hand. "I remember your kindness." Another rescuer smiled. "My daughter was born a week after we rescued you. She's starting school now." Time had passed so quickly. Yet everyone remembered those 5 unforgettable hours. As the sun began to set, our family walked to the same overlook where we had taken our last happy picture before the accident. This time we asked another visitor to take a new photograph. We stood in the exact same place, but we weren't the same people. There were scars. There were tears. There was pain we had survived together. When the camera clicked, I realized this picture meant far more than the first one ever could. The first captured our happiness. The second captured our strength. As we started walking back to the parking lot, Liam slipped his hand into mine. "Dad?" "Yes, buddy. Thank you for never giving up on me." I stopped walking and looked into his eyes. "There was never a moment when I stopped believing you'd come home." He smiled. I felt that. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. "And as long as I live, I'll keep believing in you." We continued down the trail together, surrounded by the people I loved most. That mountain had once witnessed the worst day of our lives. Now it had witnessed something even more powerful. A family that had been tested by fear, but held together by love. And I knew that no matter where life led us next, we would face it the same way we had faced those 5 unbearable hours. Together. 2 years passed after the accident, and life slowly settled into a new normal. Liam was 12 now, taller than before, stronger than anyone had expected, and carrying only a small scar on his leg as a reminder of what had happened. Most people who met him would never guess that he had once spent 5 terrifying hours trapped inside a mountain crevice fighting to stay alive. But our family remembered every detail. Sometimes, late at night, I would still wake up after dreaming that I heard Liam calling for me. "Dad, help me?" I would sit up in bed, my heart racing, before realizing it had only been a dream. Emily would gently place her hand on mine. "The nightmare again?" I nodded. She never told me to forget. She simply held my hand until I calmed down. One afternoon, while cleaning the garage, Liam found the backpack I had carried on the day of our hike. It was still stained with mud from the mountain. He brought it into the house. "Dad, you never cleaned this." I looked at the old backpack and smiled sadly. "I couldn't." He sat beside me on the porch. "For a long time, I couldn't even look at it." Liam ran his hand across one of the torn straps. "I remember this. You carried it when you climbed down trying to reach me. I wanted to save you. You tried." He looked into my eyes. "And that's all I needed to know." His words brought tears to my eyes. I realized something that day. Children don't expect perfect parents. They simply need parents who never stop trying. A few weeks later, our family received another unexpected surprise. The park administration invited us to attend the opening of a new safety project at Eagle Ridge Mountain Park. After Liam's accident, the dangerous section of the trail had been completely redesigned. New safety barriers had been installed. Warning signs were placed in multiple languages. Emergency call stations had been added along the hiking route. The park director greeted us warmly. "Liam's accident taught us valuable lessons. We never wanted another family to experience what yours did." Hearing those words filled me with mixed emotions. If our pain had helped protect other families, then perhaps something good had come from it. During the ceremony, Liam was invited to cut the ribbon opening the safer trail. He looked surprised. "Me?" The director smiled. "Yes. Because your courage helped make these changes possible." As Liam cut the ribbon, everyone applauded. Families with young children began walking along the newly improved trail. Parents held their children's hands. Kids laughed as they admired the beautiful scenery. Watching them filled my heart with peace. For the first time, I looked at the mountain without feeling fear. Instead, I felt gratitude. Gratitude that my son was alive. Gratitude for every rescuer who had refused to give up. Gratitude for a second chance. Before leaving, Liam walked quietly to the safety fence overlooking the place where he had once been trapped. He stood there for several moments. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He smiled softly. "I'm thinking about how different today feels. That place used to remind me of fear. And now," he looked toward the mountains glowing in the evening sunlight, "now it reminds me that miracles are real." Emily slipped her arm around him. "No," she smiled through tears. "It reminds us that hope is real." As we walked back toward the parking lot, Sophie reached over and held her brother's hand, just as she had done when they were younger. The 4 of us walked side by side, laughing about small things, making plans for dinner, and arguing playfully about whose turn it was to choose the movie that night. To anyone passing by, we looked like an ordinary family. They couldn't see the pain we had survived. They couldn't hear the echoes of that terrible day. But perhaps that was the greatest gift of all. Life had not erased our scars. It had taught us to carry them with gratitude instead of fear. And every time I looked at my children smiling beside me, I silently thanked God for the miracle I had almost lost. Some people count their blessings once a year. After that day on the mountain, I counted mine every single morning. 5 years have passed since the day the mountain almost took my son from us. Liam is 15 now. He's taller than I am, his voice has deepened, and the little boy I once carried on my shoulders has become a young man with a kind heart and quiet strength. The scar on his leg is still there. Every now and then it aches when the weather changes, but he never complains. Instead, he smiles and says, "It's just a reminder that I'm still here." One Saturday morning, Liam walked into the kitchen with a brochure in his hand. "Dad, can we talk?" I looked up from my coffee. "Of course." He sat across from me and took a deep breath. "My school is organizing a volunteer program with the Mountain Search and Rescue Team this summer." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words mountain and rescue brought back memories I had spent years trying to quiet. Emily looked at me, knowing exactly what I was thinking. Liam noticed our expressions. "I know you're worried, but listen to me first." I nodded. He continued. "I don't want that day to be the reason I'm afraid for the rest of my life. I want it to be the reason I help someone else." Those words stopped me completely. I saw the little boy who had once cried for help from between two giant rocks, but I also saw the young man he had become, responsible, compassionate, brave. A few weeks later, we attended his first rescue training session. Officer Reynolds was there, now with more gray hair than I remembered. The moment he saw Liam, a huge smile spread across his face. "Look at you. I almost didn't recognize you." Liam laughed. "I've grown a little." Officer Reynolds shook his hand proudly. "You've grown into exactly the kind of person we hoped you would." The training lasted all day. Liam learned basic first aid, map reading, emergency communication, and how to stay calm during a rescue. Watching him gave me a feeling I couldn't describe. Years ago, strangers had fought to save my son. Now my son wanted to spend his life helping save strangers. On the drive home, I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You know..." "What?" "I've never been prouder of you." He smiled. "I learned from you." I laughed softly. "No, you taught me far more than I ever taught you." Later that year, our family was invited back to Eagle Ridge Mountain Park for a special dedication. Near the trail where Liam had been trapped, the park had built a small viewing area with new safety signs and educational displays about hiking responsibly. One display included a simple message: stay together, stay alert. Every step matters. The park director asked Liam if he would say a few words. He stepped up to the microphone, looked at the crowd of families, and smiled. When I was 10 years old, I thought my life was over. The mountain taught me something I'll never forget. Courage isn't about never being scared. It's about refusing to give up, even when you're terrified. He paused. "And if you're hiking with your family," he looked over at us, "hold their hands whenever you can. You never know how precious an ordinary moment really is." The crowd applauded, and I noticed many parents reaching for their children's hands. As the ceremony ended, Emily slipped her hand into mine. "We've come a long way." I nodded. "We have." That evening we stood together at the overlook where everything had changed years earlier. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. Liam stood between Emily and me. Sophie leaned against her brother's shoulder. No one said anything for a while. The silence wasn't painful anymore. It was peaceful. Finally, Liam looked at me. "Dad? Yes? Thank you for never letting go." I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. "I never will." As we walked back down the trail together, I realized something that had taken me years to understand. The mountain hadn't defined our family. Love had. Fear had visited us. Pain had tested us. But love had carried us through every single moment. And that was the greatest victory of all. 10 years have passed since the day our family hike became the most terrifying experience of our lives. Sometimes people ask me if I still think about that mountain. The answer is yes. Not because I live in fear anymore, but because that mountain taught me lessons I will carry for the rest of my life. Liam is now a young man preparing for college. True to his childhood dream, he plans to study environmental science and hopes to become a park ranger one day. Every time I see him putting on his hiking boots, I smile. There was a time when I thought he would never walk again. Now I watch him climb mountains with confidence, wisdom, and respect for nature. Sophie has grown into a compassionate young woman. She says the day her brother was trapped taught her that every life is precious. She dreams of becoming a nurse because she wants to comfort families during the hardest moments of their lives. Emily and I often sit together on our back porch in the evenings, watching our children laugh and tease each other. Sometimes she catches me staring at them. "What are you thinking?" she asks. I always give her the same answer. "I'm just grateful. Grateful that I can hear Liam's laughter. Grateful that Sophie still hugs her brother every chance she gets. Grateful that our family was given another chance when so many others never are." Every year, on the anniversary of the accident, we return to Eagle Ridge Mountain Park. We don't go there to relive the pain. We go there to celebrate life. We stand at the overlook, hold hands, and thank God for the miracle that brought our son back to us. Before leaving, we always stop to thank the search and rescue volunteers who continue risking their lives for complete strangers. Without them, our story would have ended very differently. One afternoon, while we were leaving the park, a father recognized Liam from an old newspaper article. He walked over with his young son. "Are you the boy who got trapped here years ago?" Liam smiled. "I was." The little boy looked up at him with wide eyes. "Were you scared?" Liam knelt so they were eye to eye. "I was very scared." "Then how did you make it?" Liam smiled gently. "I kept believing that my family wasn't going to stop looking for me." The father quietly wiped away a tear. Before they walked away, he hugged his son a little tighter. Watching that moment reminded me why sharing our story matters. Not because it's dramatic, not because it's unbelievable, but because it reminds people how quickly life can change. If there's one lesson I hope you take from our journey, it's this. Never let a busy schedule keep you from the people you love. Tell your children you love them every single day. Hold your spouse's hand a little longer. Forgive small arguments. Create memories while you still can, because no one knows what tomorrow will bring. One ordinary family outing changed our lives forever. It could have ended in heartbreak. Instead, it became a story of courage, hope, faith, and the incredible power of love. When I close my eyes today, I no longer hear my son's frightened cries echoing through the mountain. Instead, I hear something far more beautiful. His laughter. And to me, that is the sweetest sound in the world. If our family's story has touched your heart, then let it be a reminder to cherish every ordinary moment. Sometimes, the greatest blessings are the people sitting beside you today. Love them, protect them. Never take them for granted, because at the end of life, it won't be the money you earned or the things you owned that matter most. It will be the hands you held, the hugs you shared, and the family you never gave up on. Our story didn't end on that mountain. It truly began the day we walked back down it together. And every day since then has been a gift we will never waste. Thank you so much for watching this story until the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional story. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, and what would you have done if you were in my place? Your support means the world to us and helps us continue creating powerful, heartfelt stories. Until next time, take care of your loved ones, stay safe, and remember, life can change in a single moment, so cherish every day. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.